The room is silent. Berlin is surrounded. Retreat was the only logical option, but the order never came. Divisions that no longer existed were ordered to attack. Germany wasn't losing the war. Reality was being ignored. The decision that changed everything. The room is silent. Maps cover the walls. Red arrows push toward Berlin from every direction. Outside, artillery echoes closer than anyone expected. Inside the bunker, generals wait. They already know the situation is hopeless. Supplies are gone. Armies are surrounded. Retreat is the only logical option. But the order never comes. Instead, a calm voice insists the counterattack will begin soon. Entire divisions that no longer exist are expected to move. Officers exchange glances but say nothing. In that moment, Germany is no longer losing because of enemy strength. It is losing because reality itself is being rejected. In that room, something invisible had already failed. Not the army, not the weapons, the ability to make decisions grounded in reality. By 1944, Germany still possessed experienced commanders. Many of them had fought since the early victories in Poland and France. They understood logistics, terrain, and the limits of exhausted soldiers. Men like Heinz Guderian, Erich von Manstein, and Gerd von Rundstedt were not amateurs. They were among the most capable operational thinkers of the war. These were men who had won wars before, and now they were being ignored. And yet, their advice stopped mattering. The shift did not happen overnight. Early in the war, Hitler often listened carefully. Success reinforced confidence. Rapid victories created a dangerous psychological pattern. Outcomes seemed to confirm personal intuition over professional expertise. Each victory strengthened one belief. Instinct was superior to analysis. When France fell in 1940, many generals privately admitted surprise at how quickly the campaign succeeded. Hitler interpreted this differently. To him, it proved that traditional military thinking was cautious, outdated, even weak. What no one realized then was that this victory changed who was allowed to be right. The lesson he absorbed was not collaboration, but validation. Success quietly changed the decision-making structure of the entire war. As the conflict expanded eastward into the Soviet Union, reality became more complicated. Operation Barbarossa began with massive gains, but distances were enormous, supply lines fragile, and winter approaching. Commanders repeatedly warned that forces needed flexibility. They requested permission to withdraw from exposed positions. The answer was refusal. The first major psychological turning point arrived during the Battle of Moscow in late 1941. German troops froze in temperatures they were never equipped to survive. Commanders argued for tactical retreats to preserve manpower. Any experienced commander knew retreat could save an army, but this time, retreat was forbidden. Hitler issued a new principle: no retreat under any circumstances. On paper, it sounded like determination. Psychologically, it revealed something deeper. Retreat meant admitting miscalculation, and admitting miscalculation threatened the identity he had built around infallibility. So positions were held. Thousands froze. Entire formations collapsed.
And a precedent was set. Military logic would now compete with personal conviction. The pattern intensified at Stalingrad. By late 1942, the German Sixth Army was encircled. Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus requested permission to break out while escape was still possible. Multiple commanders agreed. Intelligence confirmed Soviet strength was increasing daily. The window for survival was closing by the hour. Every delay meant thousands more soldiers trapped with no escape. Hitler refused again. He believed holding the city would stabilize the front and preserve symbolic victory. But psychologically, Stalingrad had become more than strategy. It had become personal validation. Abandoning it meant accepting limits. Instead, assurances arrived that supplies would be delivered by air. Luftwaffe commanders privately knew this was impossible. Weather, distance, and aircraft numbers made success unrealistic. Yet dissent grew dangerous. Officers learned that disagreement was interpreted as disloyalty. In meeting rooms like this, officers learned a dangerous lesson. Bad news became risky to deliver. Reports grew optimistic. Reality softened before reaching leadership. This feedback loop isolated decision-making further. By 1944, the situation worsened dramatically after the Allied landings in Normandy. German commanders in France urgently requested armored divisions be released immediately to repel the invasion. Speed was critical, hours mattered, but authority over those divisions had been centralized. They could not move without personal approval. Approval came too late. By the time orders arrived, the invasion was already irreversible. This delay allowed Allied forces to establish a permanent foothold in Western Europe. A strategic opportunity vanished, not because commanders misunderstood the battlefield, but because decision-making bottlenecked around one individual. Isolation deepened after the failed July 20 assassination attempt. Trust evaporated. Experienced officers were removed or executed. Remaining commanders became increasingly cautious about contradicting orders. Fear replaced honest communication. By early 1945, military conferences inside the bunker resembled performances more than strategy sessions. Maps showed units that existed only on paper. Counteroffensives were planned using imaginary reserves. By now, evidence no longer changed decisions. Decisions changed the interpretation of evidence. Alternative explanations were rejected to preserve certainty. Reality became negotiable. Generals continued presenting facts, but decisions were already emotionally predetermined. The war was no longer guided by changing conditions. It was guided by the need to maintain certainty. And certainty demanded denial. The final months revealed the full cost of this psychological collapse. Cities were defended long after strategic value disappeared. Soldiers fought without supply or reinforcement. Civilian casualties multiplied as destruction intensified. Military defeat had become inevitable long before surrender arrived. The remaining decisions only determined how many more lives would be lost before acceptance came. When Berlin finally fell in May 1945, historians often focused on overwhelming Allied strength, but another battlefield had existed simultaneously, invisible yet decisive. The battlefield inside leadership itself. The generals in that bunker had understood the war was lost long before the orders changed. Germany did not lack experienced generals. It lacked a system where truth could safely reach power. Every ignored warning, every delayed retreat, every rejected reality accumulated into irreversible consequences. Strategic collapse rarely begins with one catastrophic mistake. It begins with small moments when disagreement becomes unwelcome, when confidence replaces evaluation, when leaders stop hearing the people closest to reality. The war demonstrated a lesson far beyond military history. Nations do not fail only because enemies advance. They fail when decisions detach from evidence, when authority isolates itself, and when belief becomes stronger than truth. In the end, the maps on the bunker walls never changed fast enough to match the world outside, and by the time reality finally entered the room, history had already decided the outcome.